just so humbling when an idea that is entirely yours that you bled for finally connects with the world. Zola's voice, amplified by the gallery's microphone, was smooth as polished granite. A single spotlight caught the smug curve of her smile, reflecting off the chrome base of the sculpture she claimed as her own. Our own. The air was thick with the scent of expensive wine and quiet reverence. All I could feel was the icy calm of a decision locking into place. I said just loud enough for the person beside me to hear, "It certainly is." We met in a community college metalsmithing class, a place that smelled of ozone and hot steel. Zola had the ideas, these grand, sprawling concepts for sculptures that defied gravity and convention. I had the hands, the patience to execute the 1,000 tiny welds needed to bring her visions to life. We were a perfect, symbiotic thing. Our first real project was a kinetic mobile for a student exhibition, a delicate dance of copper and brass. We stayed up for 2 straight nights in the workshop, fueled by stale coffee from a vending machine and a shared playlist on a cracked iPhone. The moment it finally balanced, spinning slowly in the dusty light, felt like magic. That was the good memory. The red flag came a week later, printed in the exhibition program. Kinetic Study in Copper by Zola Vance. When I pointed it out, she waved it away with an apologetic laugh. "Oh my God, Matteo, they must have made a typo. You know, I see us as a team." I believed her. It was easier to believe in a typo than a betrayal. That belief carried us for 3 years. We got a shared studio downtown, a beautiful drafty space with high ceilings and concrete floors stained with years of other people's work. We became Z and M Design. Or rather, she was the Z and I was the ampersand. I spent my days behind a welding mask, my world reduced to the molten pool of metal, while she took meetings at chic restaurants like Per Se and The Modern. She was the face, I was the foundation. It worked. Our pieces started selling. Warm memories from that time feel like snapshots. Installing a massive brushed steel piece in a corporate lobby in Midtown, Zola directing the crane operator while I triple-checked the anchor bolts, celebrating a $20,000 sale with cheap tacos from a food truck, sitting on the curb because we were too exhausted to go anywhere else. The way she'd bring me coffee in the morning, exactly how I liked it. The cracks started as hairline fractures. She'd bill a client for materials I'd paid for out of my own pocket, promising to reimburse me. The square deposits always came weeks late and sometimes short a few $100s. She's a visionary, I told myself, not an accountant. She'd pitch a new series to gallery using renderings I'd spent a month creating, and in the meetings, I'd hear her use the word I instead of we. It was a subtle shift, a slow erasure. I rationalized it as her being the front woman, the performer. I was the quiet partner, that was my role. The discovery came not with a bang, but with the quiet chime of a misdirected email. I was cleaning up our shared G Suite, archiving old projects when it landed in the primary inbox instead of her personal one. The subject line, Solo Exhibition VRRIDIA in Gallery. My heart went cold. I opened it. The curator, a woman named Ramona, was effusive. "Zola, we are absolutely thrilled to offer you a solo show this fall. Your singular vision and flawless execution on the Tectonic series are precisely what the art world needs right now." Singular vision, flawless execution. I had personally spent over 400 hours welding, grinding, and polishing every single piece in that series. That night, I started digging. For 3 weeks, I became a forensic accountant of our own lives. I used Google Drive's version history and saw it plain as day. Zola, systematically going through our pitch decks from the last year, changing every instance of Z and M Design to Zola Vance. I found a separate Square account, linked not to our business checking but to her personal savings, that had processed over $60,000 in private sales I knew nothing about. Each new discovery widened the scope of the betrayal from simple credit theft to calculated, systematic fraud. It wasn't just my name she was erasing, it was my livelihood. The breaking point was the opening night at the Viridian. The gallery was packed with art world heavyweights, critics, and wealthy collectors. I stood in the back, a ghost at my own feast, watching Zola hold court. A prominent art blogger named Tara, phone in hand, asked her, "So, what is your process? How does a piece like this come to be?" Zola smiled, a picture of artistic integrity. "My process is solitary. I have an assistant who handles some of the labor, of course, but the soul of the work, the spark, that's mine. You can't collaborate on a soul, assistant." The word hung in the air, sucking all the oxygen out of the room. My vision narrowed. The clinking glasses, the murmur of the crowd, it all faded into a dull hum. In that moment of absolute stillness, the plan began to form, not from rage but from a profound need for correction. A quiet, methodical settling of accounts. And I remembered a tiny, overlooked detail. On the inside of a joint on every single piece I had ever built, hidden from view unless you knew exactly where to look, was my maker's mark, a minuscule, flawlessly welded M. Something she had never once noticed. The next Monday, I was in the sterile, quiet office of Ms. Wallace, an intellectual property attorney whose name I'd gotten from a friend. She was sharp, pragmatic, and wore no jewelry. She listened to my story without a flicker of emotion, only stopping to ask for dates and figures. The plan she outlined was methodical and airtight. The total cost would be just over $15,000 in legal fees, draining most of my savings. It was a price I was more than willing to pay. I spent the next week gathering my ammunition. A close call came on Wednesday. I was in the studio, photographing the maker's mark on the last 2 sculptures before they were shipped out, when Zola walked in unexpectedly. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands stayed steady. I told her I was just taking archival photos for our portfolio. She just nodded, distracted by a call from her new publicist. The evidence folder grew thick, 1 screenshots of the Google Drive version history, with timestamps showing her deleting my name. 2, a spreadsheet cross-referencing my bank statements, totaling $42,800 in personal funds spent on raw steel and tungsten, with Zola's fraudulent invoices. 3, the misdirected Veridian email. 4, high-resolution, macro-lens photographs of my M mark on all 12 sculptures in the show. 5 text messages from Zola saying, "Hey, can you spot me for the Cobalt order? I'll get you back next week." She never did. 6, the complete transaction history from her secret Square account, printed and highlighted. 7, the final, ironic piece of leverage arrived via an Instagram DM. A guy named Sam, a fellow student from that first metalsmithing class, sent me a message. Mateo. Saw the Veridian show online. That TIG welding technique is 100% you. Zola could never get her seams that clean. Amazing work, man. He became my sworn affidavit. The trap was a decoy. Ms. Wallace sent Zola a simple, non-threatening email requesting a meeting to discuss the future of our collaboration and Mateo's role moving forward. Zola, arrogant and assuming I was coming to beg for scraps, agreed immediately. The conference room at Wallace & Partners was aggressively neutral. Beige walls, polished mahogany table, a carafe of ice water. Zola swept in 5 minutes late wearing a new, ridiculously expensive-looking blazer. She radiated condescending pity. I started. "Zola, thank you for coming to discuss my contributions." She held up a hand, silencing me. "Look, Mateo, you've been a great help, really. But I'm moving in a new direction and it's time for me to fly solo. Creatively, you understand. I'm prepared to offer you $5,000 as a severance. For your time." She slid a personal check across the table. I didn't look at it. Instead, Ms. Wallace slid a thin blue folder toward her, the first wave. It contained the Google Drive history, my bank statements, her secret Square logs. Zola's bravado evaporated as she flipped through the pages. Her face went from confused to pale to panicked. This is a misunderstanding, a bookkeeping error." Ms. Wallace said nothing. She simply pushed a second, thicker folder in front of the first. The killer proof. It contained the crystal-clear photos of my maker's mark on every single sculpture. On top was the signed, notarized affidavit from Sam, identifying my unique welding signature. Zola stared at the photo of the tiny M, her mouth opening and closing silently. She finally found her voice, a weak, reedy thing. "You can't prove this. This is just your word against mine." I leaned forward slightly. "I don't have to. The Veridian's legal team will once they receive this." The fallout was immediate and spectacular. Within 24 hours, the Veridian Gallery had indefinitely postponed the show pending a provenance investigation. Tara, the art blogger, posted a scathing exposé titled "The Ghost in the Machine," and Zola's Instagram was flooded with thousands of comments calling her a fraud. She called me 27 times in one night. I let every call go to voicemail. We settled out of court. The mediated agreement forced her to pay me 60% of all past and current sales, a sum of $87,450, plus my legal fees. The Veridian canceled the exhibition permanently and sent a letter to their network that effectively blacklisted her. Her reputation, the thing she had stolen from me to build, was incinerated. Months later, I saw her. I was walking past a Crate and Barrel, and there she was, through the large plate glass window, wearing a black apron. She was fluffing a display pillow, her movements listless and mechanical. The supreme irony wasn't lost on me. A woman who had built her career on claiming to create things from scratch was now just arranging objects other people had made. I have my own studio now, a smaller space, but it's all mine. The Veridian, impressed with my work and my integrity, offered me a spot in their upcoming group show for emerging artists. An interviewer for an art journal asked me last week about my creative process. I thought for a moment before I answered. My process is about connection. The soul of the work comes from honest collaboration, even if it's just between the artist and the materials. I never saw her again, and I never needed to.